All right. Thanks for joining us, guys, for this panel. Maybe before we kind of get into the meat of things, we'll do a quick intro of the panelists here and like what you guys kind of work on specifically for your projects. I think they've already told. I'm at Pantera. I do investing for DeFi infrastructure and AI for the firm. But yeah, let's kind of go down the line.
Yeah, sure. Hey, everyone. I'm John Peterson from the Coinbase Developer Platform. I'm the engineering lead on Coinbase's Agent Kit.
I'm Seg from Sonic. We're formerly Phantom, Phantom, and we just rebranded with major tech upgrades and economic upgrades and other exciting things. We're about 2 months old now, but we're layer one, obviously.
Hey everyone, I'm Matt. I'm an EigenLayer from EigenLabs.
Hey guys, I'm Kuleen, part of the team of the Solana Foundation. Do a few growth-related things internally, but relevant to this group, I lead our efforts in AI.
Okay, great. Before we kind of get into like L1 and L2s and like all the fights between like what's better for AI agents, would love to kind of hear your perspective just in general on why blockchains are uniquely or necessary or not necessary for kind of the AI stack of today and the future. I'm curious to hear kind of your perspective from the types of projects that you're working on.
Yeah, sure. I can give some insights there. I think that the main thing that our team is really focused on is using blockchain as a payment rail for agents to interact agent to agent as well as agent to human in a commerce setting. And so you can use like agents obviously have browser control in certain settings, and they're able to interact with browsers, put in credit card information, and transact like a human would. I don't feel that that's the most appropriate or natural medium for agents. I think programmatic money, if you want to call blockchain that, is a much more effective and natural way for agents to transact, especially between themselves as well as between the Web3 and Web2 world. And so I think blockchain provides a unique opportunity to capture the payment space within agentic commerce.
Yeah, and I think I sort of agree with the sentiment as well. It's sort of like there are things that blockchain is just not good at, and very square peg, round hole type of things, and people will try to fit the sort of shoehorn it in to fit the narrative that they want to present. But I think there are things that the blockchain is really good at, and I think agents being able to transact programmatically is one of them. And I think that there are certain things like intensive compute that should occur on a centralized environment, because decentralized compute, I don't want to cause a controversy, but generally speaking, centralization is more efficient. And so if you have a decentralized/centralized approach for different tasks that you want to accomplish, I think using both in their appropriate realms makes a lot of sense. And so maybe inference is done off-chain, and then verification of the inference results are done on-chain, and then you have a really good, robust system that can be used for different sorts of things. So at Sonic, we're really focusing on right now agents, because that is the most sort of hand-in-glove use case for AI. But I'm excited to seeing other use cases that open up that actually make sense. But if they don't make sense, we're not going to try to sort of fit them into our narrative for no reason.
Yeah, similar thread. I would say like programmatic money definitely is like something that is clear. That's not necessarily completely unique to blockchains necessarily, right? Like the earlier reference to like a Stripe API. I guess the overall intention, though, when you are executing something on chain, you expect it to actually be executed and have this sort of commitment from this service that you're using, in this case an agent. You have this aspiration for like on-chain portfolio management and things like that. It's true that blockchains aren't the best tool, and sometimes it's a misfit tool, and really we do need certain execution to be on-chain. But even for centralized inference and the benefits as far as performance goes, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to trade that off fully for this aspect of like verifiability that you would like to get from an on-chain environment. So instead, finding a connective tissue, and that's what we are very focused on at EigenLayer and with EigenDA as well, is providing like the scale for these blockchains so that the trade-off in performance is not necessarily a hit, which in the end is really what users are going to care about, is what is like, where can I do my action intention as quickly as possible. So I think there are some things that make a lot of sense on-chain, but we also need this connective tissue between on-chain and the more computationally heavy off-chain execution as well.
The way I think about it is blockchains are fundamentally a financial technology, and the thing that they're useful for with respect to agents is letting agents use and access money and create wealth. Like, this is probably the simplest way I could put it. And if you break down that statement a little bit, so we already talked about payments, and in payments specifically, I think we'll see. Time will tell whether you use blockchains for it or you use Stripe. I actually think that there's one particular reason why you might think that the future will actually favor using a blockchain, and that's specifically permissionlessness. So I think we tend to reason about agents as like, we just imagine our head a human and then we replace the human with a robot, which kind of works, but there's some places where it breaks down, most notably that agents are scalable. So you can spin up 50,000 agents in parallel if you have sufficient compute, and then spin them down once their task is done. And if you imagine that use case, and you, for whatever reason, wanted all 50,000 of those agents to have access to money for whatever they're doing, there's some like logistical challenges. They're like, are you going to create a virtual card for every single one of them to use money, and then create a bank account as well, or are they all going to request transaction from some central wallet that you have to approve? Like, it's complicated. It's maybe solvable, but with a blockchain like Solana, you could just, if they have internet access, they can just create wallets. Like, it's just very simple. So for payments, I'd argue that like time will tell, but permissionlessness may actually be quite useful. And then as soon as an agent wants to do anything that's not just payments, so whether that's fundraising, borrowing money, trading, literally any other financial activity, I think that's where something like Solana, like, there is no second best. There's no like easy like NASDAQ API for an agent to access that lets them trade stuff, or JP Morgan API for them to borrow money. Like, we might get there. Maybe these financial institutions end up realizing that agents are an important customer base, but that already exists today. So to me, as soon as the agents become something that we trust with sort of multi-turn economic coordination, like, it's pretty obvious to me that blockchains are simply the simplest thing for them to use. Yeah, that's my take. Hey,
Awesome.
one other thing I'll say, maybe this will be a fodder for future discussion. I don't fully understand the verifiability thing, to be honest.
Okay, that's good. We can talk about that later. But yeah, maybe switching gears a bit. I know there's probably a lot of builders in the audience. We'd love to understand kind of your guys' perspective on what they should be looking at when trying to choose a chain for their AI project or AI agent. You know, like when it's a DeFi project, you're looking at liquidity, community, what type of, you know, kind of DeFi project that they're doing. But like for AI agents, probably there's a new set of parameters that builders should be kind of looking at. In your perspective, what are those?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So specifically within Coinbase Developer Platform, and with Base, which is Coinbase's EVM L2, the main things that we focus on for agents and AI agent builders is access to really powerful wallets via smart wallets, account abstraction, which allows you to quickly spin up agent wallets that are able to transact with gas sponsors. I think going back to the point that we were talking about just a moment ago, it's very likely that if you build something non-trivial with agents, you're not going to have a single agent that's doing everything for you. You're more likely to have many agents or many agent swarms that may need to dynamically spin up and spin down wallets. Individually adding native tokens to spin for gas on all of those wallets dynamically is a fairly non-trivial engineering problem. If you're able to sponsor gas using AA wallets, that's definitely something that's a big pro and something that we provide natively within AgentKit today.
Yeah, I think we sort of have a similar outlook in that the friction required to utilize the chain for agents is a very important thing to minimize. So, and also just generally speaking, like economic incentives matter a lot for developers, humans or not. And so, for example, Sonic offers something that almost no other chain can offer because it would compromise other chains' economic security. It is 90% FEM, which is basically, you think about a YouTube creator model. When you put out a video, you have revenue based on the amount of viewers that the video gets. And so what Sonic has is sort of a creator economy for developers in the same way where developers will earn 90% of the gas fees that their contracts generate on-chain back. And basically, this is taken from the validator share and given to the developers instead. So it sort of changes the economic model that has existed for a very long time with misaligned incentives in the blockchain space. And the way it applies to agents is that now your agent can monetize your application or the application that the agent develops without having to sort of like front load capital raising with a token or something like that, that just sort of is just not good long-term incentive alignment wise. And so agents can go out and they can make a lot of money just by getting users to use the protocols. And so then the protocols are incentivized to be good. And so it creates a thriving network. And then one other point I'll mention is just in terms of tooling and ecosystem sort of robustness, the layer one focused approach that we've taken is that we centralize all of our resources onto a single layer one that has every imaginable dev tool that you could need, every sort of piece of infrastructure that you could need, so the agents can sort of compose a bunch of stuff and build whatever they need to build without having to sort of have sort of like the layer two sort of fragmentation that you're seeing where this is not available on X chain and this is not available on Y chain, but one of them is available on each. So we're focusing all of our efforts on the Sonic layer one, which is basically an improved version of an EVM layer one. And we're sort of trying to make it a home for human developers and non-human developers alike in the future. So I think that's sort of what it is. You optimize for human devs and you're automatically optimizing for agent devs as well.
I think similar lines overall, like, and probably what some others will touch on as well, is this idea of like performance, and this IBRL I think is a shared interest overall, as we need to be able to increase the effective like block space essentially of like blockchains. So like in the current state where users are the ones that are manually interacting with blockchains, this idea of being able to not only just like scale up like agents and participants in a system, we need to be able to meet that demand. So there's definitely this key concept of like performance as well as latency. I think the other aspect too is that these are businesses that are like, people are deploying these agents and they have to consider what environment they're working within. I think the other sense too to consider is like mature like dev tooling and the breadth of tooling that you have to actually be able to do more complex flows. So I think that's something that a lot of these teams would also consider is you can start with like a base piece of maybe like execution and this ability to just have like an input, sort of intents are essentially just like maybe slightly dumber agents relatively without the ability of reasoning. And you have this output that happens, but really from like input to output, there's a lot of like execution or other tools that you might want to call, as well as like the full like developer like platform as far as considering like what's it hosted on and how that actually is ensured that it gets from like input to output. So I think the combination of both just like underlying blockchain infrastructure and considering these senses of performance as well as the environment that you're developing it is probably some of the key components to consider.
I'll have a slightly different take. Dev tooling is important insofar as like your quality of life is better as a developer if you have a place with good tooling. But dev tooling, in my observation, is like it gets built in the places where there's demand. The thing that's really, really difficult to do is to get attention and be in sort of like a capital-rich environment. Like, I'll use a bad analogy. Why does everyone who launches a mobile app, why are they willing to give 30% to Apple to be on the App Store? It's because distribution and attention is like the scarcest resource that exists today. And so I think like actually if you're building any kind of application, agent or otherwise, like the first thing you do is like, okay, where can I actually get any meaningful amount of traction? Then you like look at the set of ecosystems where that's possible. Then you can look at, okay, like is there tooling here that's useful for me, et cetera, et cetera. But I think your like first order thing to have a successful commercial endeavor is like, where is their attention and money? So that's like the one thing I would sort of layer on top of some of the things that I've mentioned already.
Awesome. Maybe a quick fire round because I know we're kind of running out of time. What is the primitive or optimization that you are either building on or is part of your ecosystem that you're most excited about specifically for AI projects or AI agents?
Yeah, so the main thing that Coinbase Developer Platform is working on with respect to agents right now is Coinbase's Agent Kit. It is an AI framework and model agnostic set of tools that allows developers to quickly spin up AI agents with access to any EVM or SVM, with a variety of wallet support, with CDP API wallets, Privy Server wallets, Veeam accounts, etc. We focus on making it easily extensible to other protocol families outside of EVM and SVM as well, quick to add new wallet support, and a vast set of DeFi protocols that agents are able to interact with. Our main goal is to provide a wallet to every AI agent that gets spun up today.
For me, I think for Sonic, the most exciting thing is actually a UX thing that AI enables. So basically, there are a lot of users who don't know how to do various actions on chain that a technical person might be very comfortable with. And so, for example, doing a transaction here, staking this into here, and then like doing a third thing. And that's sort of a complex flow for them. But there's a clear intention that the user has. Like, I want to get this token, I want to be part of this protocol, and then end up here. If you can describe that intent in natural language to an agent, and the agent can construct a transaction chain for you, obviously with verifiable security and all this kind of thing, if you solve that problem, then you have a really good UX boost if you can build that into existing wallets and infrastructure. And so that's actually what some of the projects on Sonic are trying to do with AI, sort of stepping away from agents for a second. It's like AI has many different applications, like I said, some of them not so good for blockchain, but some of them are really good for blockchain. And this natural language translation of complex technical tasks and concepts is one of them. And I'm pretty excited to see how that turns out in Sonic.
Thanks. Yeah, for EigenLayer, it's this sort of gap from input to output. There's a lot that is happening behind the scenes for these agents. Whether these are like data services, including like short-term memory, where you might be able to store it on something like EigenDA. The focus for EigenDA is to scale essentially the effective block space for Ethereum as well. So I think there's different categories that we think about that and parts of execution that happen between this input, desired output, when you're talking about like verifiable services. So anything from like data services to data development or model development, model deployment, as well as these tool calls, essentially those tools that enhance the abilities of agents themselves, whether this is getting like outside data feeds or the other side where you want to consider, we want agents to be able to perform and execute properly and still have these guardrails. So those services that can also provide like policies, essentially ensuring that once you put money into this agent and it's running off and doing whatever, you also want to ensure that it's doing the intended action that you desired or specified, and hopefully also those are like executed correctly. So I think this like full stack sort of from intention to execution is really what we're thinking about at EigenLayer.
I'm going to cheat a little bit. I actually don't know if like any particular piece of infrastructure is like that necessary. I also think it's like a little backwards. Like usually you have something you want to do and then you back into like, okay, what are the tools that need to exist for me to build the thing that I want to build? And so actually what I'm more interested in is like seeing people do more experimentation with, at this stage, probably the verticalized agents. I don't think we're quite there yet for very general purpose agents, but people thinking about building actual consumer or enterprise applications with specialized agents. And with that experimentation, I think that'll teach us a lot about like what needs to exist. Because otherwise you build infrastructure in a vacuum and a lot of stuff like just doesn't end up being that useful because it doesn't solve anyone's problem.
Cool. Well, looks like we ran out of time, but thanks so much for the panelists for your insights.